So, just walking through some of this worksheet packet practice. I wanted to make this video to help you review some of these problems before we start the practice for the day, and maybe even before the test you can also watch this. So we're on page 38. I'm going to start with number 8. In San Diego, the number of daylight hours is dependent on the day of the year. The number of daylight hours D can be modeled by the sinusoidal function d of t equals 2.4 sine blah 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 blah, where t is the day of the year from t equals 1 to t equals 365. Based on this model, which of the following statements is correct? So it's talking about the minimum and maximum here. So when I'm working with min and max, really I need to know two things, right? I need to, like if I have my graph here, and it's right here, I need to know a midline. Because if I have a function here, this is just a generic function. I need to know the midline and the amplitude, right? So let's just draw a wave here. Boom. So let's say the min and max are here. I just like to draw this visually. That just helps me personally. And we know that our midline comes from this part right here. Our midline is found at 12, because this is my D value, my midline value. So this is the line y equals 12. And then this number in front is my amplitude. Okay, this is my amplitude. So that tells me to the max and min, I'm going up or down by 2.4. So that would give me 14.4 here and 9.6 here. So the minimum is 9.6, which is the only one that is correct. Okay, give me 2 seconds here. Now, let's see another one that I would like to work with. So the figure shows a trigonometric function here, and it wants to know which could be an expression for g of x. So important note is that the normal sine function, so we'll just say sine of x, starts, it looks like this. So if this is 0, this is my y-axis here, it starts at 0, it goes up, down, and then back up. This is at pi over 2. This is at pi. This is at 3 pi over 2. And this is at 2 pi. Okay. And this is bounded at, it goes between 1 and -1. Okay. So a couple things that are important to note about that graph is that the first max on sine is at pi over 2. This is for the parent function. And also, my value, like my y-intercept is at 0. Okay. So when I'm looking at these sine functions here, all of these are sine in this case, I'm going to start where it tells me here. And here, there's no change to my starting position because my C value changes the starting point. And you can tell a lot of this by the y-intercept. You can tell a lot of this by the y-intercept. So, let's see which ones we can eliminate with the y-intercept. So this tells me to start at 0. And notice the y value at the start is 0, so I start at 0, 0. Okay. Start at 0, 0. I multiply by 2. 2 times 0 is 0. And then I go up 1. That gets me there. Okay, maybe that's an answer. And then here, this tells me to start right right at pi over 2, 0. Then I can say, okay, well, I multiply by 2, and I'm multiplying the y value here by 2. That's still 0, and then I end up at plus 1. That one would work, because I would start here. And then this one as well, if I start right at 0, it does the same thing. And the one that you can eliminate with this is none. But this does show you that normally you start at 0 and then go up 1. This shows you, though, what this function does. This shows you what this function does. Okay? So, next thing to check is the period, okay, or the b value. Here, my b value is 1 because there's nothing in front. So that would say that 2, because remember, my b value, my period should be 2 pi over b. So 2 pi over 1. So it should be 2 pi. But here we can see my period is 1 pi. So that eliminates this answer. So now I move to all of these and say, well, let's go back to my starting point and use what I know about the sine function. So right here, there's no negative here, so I don't flip it. And normally from the start, if I look up here, I go up at the start. So in this case, if you notice, if I start where I'm at pi over 2 here, I'm going down first. So that's why B is not the answer. And then for C, let's keep moving on to C. At pi over 2, I should be going down. Because it's negative. So it's flipped. Because normally I would go up, but because it's negative, I go down. So this is the answer. And why is D not? Well, if I start at D, my starting point, which should be here, I go up from there. But because it's negative, I should be going down. Let's do 14. This is on page 40. Here, use your points to label your axes here. So I've got 0, pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, 4 pi. And I've got 20, 16, and 12. Okay? So, and once again, I would label based on how it's written here that this is h of t, and these are my t values. Okay? So, remember the order I like to think of it in is in DAB. I'm going to find D, A, and B first. So my D is just my midline. My midline is right here. So my midline is at 16. My amplitude is the distance between my midline and the max or min, which is 4, either way you go. And then b is 2 pi over my period. So 2 pi over my period. And in this case, my period from max to max is 4 pi. So 2 pi over 4 pi, which simplifies to 1. Oh, which simplifies to 1/2. Okay, and now I've got to find my c value. So for c, and I'm re-explaining this in a different way just to make it a little bit more sense. Use the first max x value of parent function and the first of your function. So what do I mean by this? What's my parent function here? Because remember, we're trying to write this in terms of sine. So if I look back at my sine chart here, the first max of sine, like this is just the graph of sine, happens at pi over 2, comma 1, right? So the x value happens at pi over 2. The first max happens at pi over 2. And so I'm going to set pi over 2 equal to all of this component in here is my horizontal, like this is all horizontal. These are all of my horizontal changes, right? Like this is basically my x. So I take my x, I shift it by c, and I multiply for dilation of b. So I'm going to rewrite that over here. B times t plus c. That's how I find that. So my max happens, and what do I mean by my max? Well, I'm going to fill in the values that I know. My b value I found over here was 1/2. The t value, that's where my max is. And my first max is at 0. Like you'll notice here, my first max happens here at 0. So that t value is 0 plus c equals pi over 2. And I can multiply by, or I can divide by 1/2 on both sides first. So if I keep change flip, it just gives me pi. So 0 plus c is equal to pi, and 0 plus anything is whatever that is, so c is pi. So my c value is pi. And remember, when I put this in here, I've got to, I got to think about my sine here. I got to think about my sine. One second. Page am I on? 40. So, if I think about that, I've got my A is 4, B is 1/2, C is pi, and D is 16.